It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Welcome back to the program. We have Colonel Paul Deckert is with us from the Center for Security Policy. Colonel Deckert, welcome back on the program.
Thank you, Paul. Glad to be back with you. How y'all this morning?
We are doing very, very well. It's been a little bit of time since I've talked to you on the show. I know we spoke yesterday, but just want to remind everybody, you were an integral part of getting State Representative Brant Smith's bill, American Law and American Courts, passed out of both committees in the House and Senate and both the chambers, the House and Senate chambers. And, of course, it did become law, but it became law without Asa Hutchinson's signature. And the reason I wanted to have you on is because recently he's in a primary and he's taking criticism for not signing the law. He's taking criticism for opposing the law in the first place. And this is what he said on Talk Business and Politics. Quote, "I've practiced law for many years in Arkansas, and we do not have Sharia law in Arkansas. Let me be clear. I oppose Sharia law. Furthermore, I oppose Sharia law being used in Arkansas courts. The legislation in question addressed the application of foreign law, not Sharia law. We need to stop passing unnecessary laws that attempt to address problems that do not exist. I allowed the bill to become law, even though I thought it was unnecessary, or it was not necessary." End quote. Colonel Paul Deckert, what's your response to those comments?
Regrettably, predictable would be my response. We saw the governor was opposed to this bill, and Representative Smith did an excellent job and took an ocean of personal heat from the governor's surrogates as well as from the governor himself in person over trying to not let this law become law. Now, this particular law, like any good deceiver, there's truth in what he says, but it's not the whole truth. He's accurate that this is American Laws for American Courts is a bill designed to make sure that foreign law from whatever source does not, by inadvertent action or neglect, weave its way into the laws of the state of Arkansas. That is factually what the bill is about. And as we went through the process and I testified, and if I go too long in the tooth, Paul, correct me, because I kind of live this on a pretty regular basis. We have given, and I think there are people that had my testimony taped, definitely on the House side. I think on the Senate side they may have had some other folks that were watching it. Check with your AP guys. But we gave examples. There's a very famous case out of California that is dealing with Japanese law in regard to estates. And the California court, I know you're going to be shocked to hear this, the California court went ahead and allowed that to be accepted, which totally violated the protections that are granted under the Constitution to those citizens from California. There was no due process. There was no opportunity for representation. All of those rights were denied. In most often practiced, and the very most famous case is out of Maryland, happens to be an application of Sharia law. Mm-hmm. And it has to do with family court rights, specifically the rights of a mother and her daughter. The case is referred to as Malik. It's out of the state of Maryland. The thumbnail sketches this. Man and woman are married in the country of Pakistan. They have a child. The man decides he wants to divorce the woman, so he claims that she has committed adultery. She flees because under the laws in Pakistan, if it's proven so, she would be stoned. And the only ones that can prove it are him making the allegation or her having 4 men say it didn't. Okay? So she flees to the United States. He gets a judgment against her in Pakistan of divorce and to make him the sole custodial parent. Comes to the United States, to the state of Maryland, I believe it was the courts of Baltimore, and gets this judgment, this foreign judgment accepted in the state of Maryland as the judge who probably had a gazillion things going on, probably had some criminal cases, maybe had somebody else's estate in front of him, and had this domestic case where they were going to, what we call in Louisiana, they were going to naturalize this foreign judgment. And goes ahead and says, well, you know, that's the laws in that country, and under the principles of comedy and so forth, presto changeo, give up the baby. You're divorced, give up the baby.
Wow.
And they, of course, fought it and appealed it and so forth. And that's how we know about it, because it went to an appeals court. Now, this is just the blind acceptance. This lady, this was done in absentia. She did not have a right. They could have gone through the divorce proceedings here in the United States. It's not saying they couldn't go through the proceedings. It's just that the proceedings, that where you did it and how you did it, denied this woman, who was at the time a U.S. citizen, denied her her right.
Yes.
Okay? So that's kind of what we're talking about. That's kind of the impetus. That's where you get, that's where you get the motivation to make sure these things are done correctly, because there are real people out there that really get hurt when these things are done. And pardon me for droning on a little bit here, but some of the things that the governor said, I was recently asked to speak with some folks in the state of Idaho in regard to this. And I had the ACLU came out, and gotta love them. You see them doing the devil's own work everywhere they show up. God love them. But the ACLU folks said the same things that the governor said in your article, and that's why I know it's a canned line, because I hear it all over the place.
So you're saying ASA is taking the same line that you've heard the ACLU make in other states?
Yes, that is exactly what I said. And the canned line that the ACLU uses in other states is, and their supporters and their acolytes, is this is a solution in search of a problem. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're going to rewind the tape on that. This is a solution in search of a problem. Anyone who uses a line like that does not grasp Leadership 101. Leadership 101 is proactive and forecast solutions prior to the problem existing.
So let me stop you.
Example.
Yeah. I want to hear the example, but let's just read the beginning. You've laid it all out using ACLU talking points. You've laid out the case in Maryland where we do have this international law, from a civilization that is not compatible under the U.S. Constitution with what they're trying to do. And yet ASA starts his statement by saying, I've practiced law for many years in Arkansas, and we don't have Sharia law here. So that's his excuse, is he's been a lawyer in Arkansas a long time, Colonel Deckert. So we don't need this, and that comes to your point of leadership. Continue, please.
All right, so, again, there's truth in what he says. I believe him. I believe he has practiced law for a long time in Arkansas. And I believe that you do not have Sharia law in Arkansas right now. I believe both of those statements. Now, there's a military principle. You can currently find it in a book by the same name. The theory is called left of bang. Bang is any incident. I'm talking to you from New Orleans. It could be a hurricane, could be an incident. Up where y'all are, you've got New Madrid Fault, an earthquake could be an incident. Mm-hmm. Out to the west, it could be a wildfire, could be an incident. Or at Little Rock Airport, it could be a terrorist incident. Whatever the thing is, that's bang. Right of bang is how quickly we respond once there is an incident. Something happens, we respond. That's to the right of it. Left of bang is what we do before bang. Now, there's not a lot I can do pre-earthquake except prepare. There's not a lot I can do pre-hurricane except prepare. For some other man-made things, I can prevent. And there's where the difference comes in. And that's where leadership comes in. What have we seen? It hasn't happened here yet, but it's happening. What have we seen? How do I prepare in order to prevent? And that's what this sort of legislation does. Now, I'm going to give you my example because I kind of like this one. So let's use a fire. What we're talking about is we have seen that there have been fires in buildings. So the legislature, who expresses the will of the people and makes the laws, and sometimes elected officials need to be reminded of that, the legislature who expresses the will of the people and makes the laws says things like, we know there's fires that happen. It hasn't happened in our building yet, but we're going to come up with a rule that says you need to have sprinklers. You need to have sprinklers above the second floor so that if there is a fire, we don't lose the people in the building.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? The people who were focusing on, well, we've never had a fire. Okay? You're correct. The building is standing. It has never caught fire. So what's your solution? Let's spend money on bigger engines in the fire truck so they get there faster after the building catches fire. That's your idea of leadership? You want to come up with a better way to respond after it happens, but you don't want to do a doggone thing until it happens. You know, it's the sort of thing where I feel sorry for these timid souls who refuse to lead, because should anything happen, they will never have a nice sleep again if they have any kind of a functioning mind or connected soul, because they know they will have missed the opportunity to do what they were elected to do. So God bless the legislature in the state of Arkansas, because they did lead. They did say, this is a step to make sure that we prevent mothers from having their children taken away from them, because some place other than here came up with a ruling, and we had people that didn't have the clear express will of the legislature to stand on firmly and act. That's all judges do.
Yeah.
Judges simply say, yes, this is in compliance, no, this isn't. Judges don't rule from the bench. Some of them need to be reminded of that, too.
Yeah, they do. For sure. Wow. I mean, that's just really, really powerful stuff. And I love that concept, left of bang, right of bang. And it really is, one is what a leader does, and the other is what a leader does not do. And I'm really glad, Colonel Paul Deckert, that you recognize what the Arkansas General Assembly did, because they did stand up to a lot of pressure. On our Facebook feed over at facebook.com/Conduit News, State Representative Brant Smith is watching this interview, and he just said repeatedly, I was told I'm looking for a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. And yet, Brant stood up, the legislature stood up, and, the governor didn't want to veto it because there would have been a lot of backlash. So instead, he just refuses to sign it. And luckily in Arkansas, if you refuse to sign long enough, it just becomes law without the governor's signature. And so here we have. But now he's taking criticism for that in a primary, and he's coming out and saying the law wasn't necessary. And I think that you have pretty well refuted that. I mean, I was already convinced, but I think a lot of people out there are convinced as well, sir.
Well, first of all, I cannot say enough good about Representative Brant Smith. That is a quality individual. And I know that man stood against near-term political pressure, but he has done work for his church all over the world. He is just a quality individual. He is a very intelligent man. He is a former college professor, and a good one, a real one, not some freak like we have on a lot of campuses out there these days.
Yeah.
Just cannot say enough good about him. And what I'm referring to, and I want to be perfectly clear, that I'm simply stating what the law does and the actions that I've seen. Like I said before, I don't have a cross against Governor Hutchinson per se. I have a cross against some of the actions that people have taken and the things they have said.
Yes.
And if they want to fall into those given buckets, that's on them.
Yeah.
But when I've seen people act a certain way, at some point in time, I have to be a sapient being and draw a conclusion. So, what we've seen and the actions that were taken by the men and women of the legislature, both the House and the Senate in Arkansas, were stellar. And they vigorously debated, and they, pointed out where they thought there were issues, and there were amendments that went back and forth so that this would be in pure, conforming with the laws of the state of Arkansas and the will of their representatives.
And real quick, 'cause we're out of time. We're out of time. But Colonel Paul Deckert, just tell us how many other states have passed this a version of this law that you're intricately involved in all this across the country.
There's 10 that have passed it. In addition to Arkansas, there are another, I think, 5 that are somewhere in the process as we speak. So this isn't like some bizarre fringe thing. The first ones that passed it, the earliest ones that passed it, Tennessee, Louisiana, were in the beginning of 2003-ish.
Wow.
So these have been out there for a long time. And when people say things like, well, that's not constitutionally valid. Oh, really? Hello? It's been 15 years. Mm-hmm. It's in place in other places. So they're red herrings. They're throwing. They're like a howler monkey. They poop in their hands and they throw it at you.
Colonel Paul Deckert, I appreciate it, sir. It's always a pleasure. Thanks for dropping a lot of truth here on the program today. And be safe and let's stay in touch.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it.
All righty, folks. We got to.